live right here on this Monday on the early line on SportsGrid. A huge weekend in men's college basketball because for some at the high major level, it was the end of a regular season, outright regular season crowns on the line in league play to set the stage for conference championship week that is forthcoming and how those seed lines would look for conference tournaments and maybe even the eventual big dance and 4 tickets to the NCAA tournament in 2024 at stake over the weekend. Over the past 48 hours, those 4 berths have now been taken to the NCAA tournament as well. We enter the zone to look back on it all. This is March. How do you want to end a regular season in ACC action with a conference crown on the line? That would be down Tobacco Road, inside Cameron Indoor, the Crazies of Duke and the Tar Heel Blue of North Carolina. UNC, booked as a 4.5-point road underdog, walks into Durham and comes out with a 5-point victory in its first ACC regular season title since 2017. 84-79 in a game that had a little bit of everything between these two rivals. Again, North Carolina wins outright as a 4.5-point dog. Total of 150 and a hook goes over.
And taking a look at the ACC, the championship was on the line. You knew coming in here the North Carolina Tar Heels were going to raise a banner, at least as co-champions here. But nobody wants to be a co-champion and have a chance to win the outright against your rival Duke 8 miles away here. And they handled their business. On Friday, breaking this game down, Ben, both myself and Davis Maddock, I said to myself, Carolina Tar Heels just a better basketball team and getting points in this game. Sign me up on this edge, because the one thing we know about North Carolina and also Duke, this is an ACC that's been down this year. These two are clearly the leads in the ACC. Now, granted, as we look at the rankings here that'll be out shortly, they're both top 10 teams as for now. But I'm not looking towards for these teams, I should say, towards March Madness, as I say to myself, do I think either one of these teams can make a March Madness run and cut down the nets? I don't think that's possible. But between these two, when they play each other, you throw the records out in the books. And Duke desperately wanted to win that game on their home court to end the season and get momentum. They weren't able to do that. Why? Efficiency from the three-point range. It wasn't Duke. It was Carolina. 7 of 15 here. That's what got it done. Love the performance by the Tar Heels, but I got to say this. I expected the Tar Heels to win this game, Ben.
7 of those threes made by the Notre Dame transfer Cormac Ryan, a career-high 31 points. He was 6 of 8 from deep, and he was letting the Crazies inside Cameron know all about it. I think the real MVP of this season and this game, the medical staff at Duke University, to make sure that Kyle Filipowski's right leg was in good enough shape that he could trip Harrison Ingram from North Carolina. He denied the tripping after the game, but Flip, we got cameras all over the stadium, my brother. It looks as though it was pretty flagrant. Something about those Duke Blue Devils and sticking out a leg. And then we got to the end of the game where the Cameron Crazies were chucking water onto the floor while John Shire is apologizing for the poor performance on one side. And North Carolina is chirping the student section. Some may say it's too much or blah, blah, blah. That's college basketball. That's the best rivalry in the sport. Appreciate it. Both Duke and North Carolina, of course, will enter the NCAA tournament as high seeds. UNC, first regular season conference crown in 7 years. They'll be the top seed in the ACC tournament this weekend. Duke, that number 2 seed. Houston, in its first year in the Big 12, the champions of the Big 12. DRS, after dropping 2 of their first 3 games in this league, and both you and I uttered, uh-oh, Houston, this ain't the American any longer. Boy, were we a little bit short-sighted in that one. Houston ends the year winners of 9 straight to win its first ever Big 12 title in the best league in college basketball in its first year in said league with a dominant 30-point win at home over a top 15 Kansas team on Saturday afternoon. The Cougs covered as a 7.5-point home favorite.
7.5, too many points here. That game was 40-21 at the break, and away Houston went here. And the interesting part about this game, too, is sometimes you don't really know which teams are going to show up on the last game of the season. Because you know the Kansas Jayhawks, like, okay, well, we know we're in the tournament here. Yes, would we love to beat Houston in their own building? But you know the emotions that Houston was going to have, like that senior night atmosphere, as well as we win this, we clinch full right outright here of the Big 12 championship for the regular season, and they did that going away in spades. This is the dangerous team when we take a look at this Houston squad, where throughout the season, you're right, Ben, they open up the season, hey, get a victory here, but then drop a couple games here in the Big 12. We say, like, oh, okay, now you're going to be in a real conference. And boy, they hit the gas pedal after those early losses in conference play. Clearly, far and away, the best team in this conference, but I didn't expect this. I thought Houston was going to win this game. Never did I think they would wipe the floor with Kansas by 30 points. And also, very un-Kansas-like here, Ben, 10-8 in Big 12 play here as they move forward. Now, they're in the top 30, say, odds-wise, 35, 30-1 in that range here. Yeah. I'm not looking for Kansas here, even though they're a top 15 program in the country, but this is one of those things where sometimes you ramp up and you say to yourself, on that top line, who did you want? UConn, Houston, Purdue, these are the ones that might sway here by going, man, if Houston puts it together and can play like this, nobody's touching them in the tournament. We just have to see if they can. Massive win and a statement game for the Houston Cougars at home.
Still one of the 20 best prices for KU to win a national championship, but it has dropped back to 45-1 now for Bill Self's Jayhawks. And part of that is probably because Hunter Dickinson, the big man, the transfer from Michigan, left the game in the second half with an apparent shoulder injury. Kevin McCullough Jr., probably the second best player for KU this year, has been banged up down the stretch, and it was not a kind stretch to Kansas. They dropped 5 of their final 9 games in the regular season. When's the last time we saw Kansas as a 6 seed in the Big 12 tournament? That's where the Jayhawks will enter. They will get underway in the Big 12 tourney in Kansas City on Wednesday. Big 12 tournament starts tomorrow on a Tuesday in KC. Now to how the SEC was won as well. Kentucky and Tennessee. Tennessee had already won the SEC on Wednesday evening. They were at home on Rocky Top against a streaky Kentucky team, and the Cats will end the year on a very positive streak. In fact, a 5-game win streak, snapping Tennessee's 7-game win streak to end out the regular season. Another road win for John Calipari and his Wildcats, 85-81. Kentucky wins outright as an 8.5-point underdog despite 166 combined points. Total stays under 167.5.
Yeah, Kentucky's for real. And also, yes, it's not the same as, like, again, the NFL is like, okay, we already clinched. Let's take off at home here on senior night or senior day, I should say, in Tennessee. And also, when we're just reading those box scores before the game, say, you know what? I'm not going to tell you who won this game, but I'm going to let you know. Connect played 36 minutes, shot 29 times, made 14 of those, which included 6 of 15 from three-point range and 6 for 9 from the free throw line. Scored 40 points in that game. It says, sign me up. Tennessee was probably a runaway victor here, but that's not the case. This is why Kentucky is so intriguing. Most of the time, Ben, you'll see a starting 5 absolutely go off on a great college basketball team because that's what happens here. You take a look at Tennessee, right? Off the bench, 1 point, 2 points, 2 points here. They got 5 total bench points here. Flip it over to Kentucky, 27 points out of Shepherd, 11 points out of Dillingham. Like, if you're getting around 50 points off of your bench, you're going to win so many games because that means you have depth and talent. It's like, oh, no, we got in foul trouble. If you can bring a guy off the bench like Shepherd, who's been doing this all season long along with Dillingham, it's fantastic to watch. It's why Kentucky is so dangerous here, and that was a really good win. Even though, as you said, Tennessee had already had the SEC wrapped up. Tennessee wasn't laying down in that basketball game as a top 5 program. Kentucky went in and took that game. Fantastic stuff.
If you bet the under 33-29 at the break, Kentucky was up, you're like, fantastic. 104 points in the second half, 52 on either side. That is the question for Kentucky. Can they defend to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament? They haven't reached a Final Four in quite a long time by Lexington standards. But Reed Shepherd has been fantastic. The Kentucky kid, 27 points. Dalton Knecht, the best bucket getter in my estimation in all of the country, 40 points to lead Tennessee. Now some other weekend spots. UConn, despite trailing Providence early, goes into Friartown and wins by 14, 74-60, covering as a 9-point favorite. Winners of 4 straight to end the regular season. They will be that top overall seed inside Madison Square Garden this week in the Big East Tournament. Purdue, the same case in the Big Ten. Don't cover as a double-digit home favorite on Senior Day in Mackey against Wisconsin, but still Purdue ends the year atop the Big Ten for a second consecutive season. Then a shocker in Pac-12 country. USC wins outright at home against Arizona by 13 points. DRS, the Trojans, a 7.5-point underdog winning outright. SC this year, high expectation. They fall short, just 8-12 in the Pac-12, losing record overall, 14-17 this year. But the Trojans have won 4 of their last 5 entering the Pac-12 tourney. Keep an eye on USC.
Yeah, playing good at the right time here. And also, they have the superstar talent. They have the NBA talent to move forward. And also, you know what I like about this too, Ben? You always know I love to get to the box score. Like, Boogie Ellis plays 30 minutes and scores 5 points. They still won that basketball game against a top 5 team in Arizona. Now, yes, Arizona had everything wrapped up. But you have to understand this. These guys don't just say, okay, look, we can afford losses here to opponents that we're supposed to beat. Everybody is still fighting for that one line here, which is in play for a lot of these teams. So teams like Tennessee and Arizona, not just giving up on the final game. It's not that big of a deal. That could be the difference of a 1 seed and a 2 seed here, which is massive come tournament time here. That's a great win by USC, who I profited off of just a few weeks ago when I thought they now had some advantages here with their young players. Now, we'll see moving forward if USC can make a run in the Pac-12 tournament. I don't think it's going to happen, but would it be all that much of a surprise with the talent they have? Not really.
I think that keeps Zona completely out of consideration of the one line for the NCAA tournament. I would look at North Carolina right now as that 4th and final 1 seed. Plenty more around college basketball coming your way next. Welcome back to the early line on this Monday. So the regular season finale weekend at the high major level in college basketball. Now it is postseason play for everybody. All 362 D1 schools now into the postseason. Some have already been eliminated from conference tournament action. And 4 teams have already punched their ticket to the big dance, that 2024 men's NCAA tournament. On Saturday, the first ticket punched out of the Ohio Valley, Morehead State. They were the favorites entering the OVC tournament, an even money plus 100 number. We will get to Drake in just a moment. Stetson, third best price out of the A-Sun. They go to the big dance at a 5-1 price. As we shared, Jalen Blackman, 43 points yesterday for the Hatters against Austin Peay to send Stetson to its first ever NCAA tournament. Longwood and Morehead State, 2 of the 4 tickets punched as Longwood out of the Big South, a 12-1 number, 5th shortest into the big dance, and into the Missouri Valley we go. Arch Madness is one of the best tournaments each and every year, and that MVC tournament title game yesterday, middle of your afternoon on CBS. Kevin Harlan on the call, the 1 seed Indiana State led by Robbie Avila, and the other side, number 2 Drake, led by the coach's kid, Tucker DeVries. They did not disappoint. Drake wins 84-80 outright as a 3-point underdog. DRS, they led by as many as 18 points before Indiana State. The Sycamores rallied, but at the end, it was Tucker DeVries, 27 points to lead Drake to its 2nd consecutive Missouri Valley title and their 2nd consecutive appearance in the NCAA tournament.
And if you're just taking a look from Drake's perspective, you're on a neutral court here, and you feel bad for Indiana State because it probably looks like they're going to be left out here when, quite frankly, I do believe they're deserving to get into the big dance. But if we're just being honest, you got to play a little bit of defense here. 52% from the field, from the floor here for the Drake Bulldogs, but more importantly, 11 of 18 from three-point range. You saw that early. But you can't get down that much, and I love the comeback here, but that takes so much energy out just to get back into the basketball game. Drake was the better team for the majority of the game here. Indiana State, crashed there. But you would take a look, and this is what I always like to bring up too. The regular season play here, both of these teams were awesome in conference play. 17-3 overall for Indiana State, 16-4 for Drake. So you can't, it's not really one of those, major upset here where Drake really didn't play that well during the regular season. Both of these teams deserving to go into March Madness, but also takes a little bit out of it. Like Indiana State had the better regular season record in conference play and won it, but you get usurped by a 4 or 5 day tournament where maybe somebody gets hot and wins here. Both of those teams should be deserving to go, but usually we know how that turns out. You'll get a team that's 500 in the Big Ten or the Big 12 or the ACC getting the tip over Indiana State, when maybe we'd have more fun watching Indiana State at this point. But an unbelievable finish to a great tournament that seemingly never fails to, give us something that we can't talk about the very next day. I love the MVC, and they showed out yesterday in a big way.
The Bulldogs had the second best price as the 2 seed entering the Missouri Valley Conference tournament and Arch Madness, plus 220, only behind the Sycamores of Indiana State. Now, it's very interesting. Had Indiana State actually won yesterday, Drake probably has a better resume for at-large contention. That was their 4th Quad 1 win yesterday for Drake this year. Indiana State only has 1. Now, that's the very interesting thing for the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee to consider. It will be a very nervy week in Terre Haute for Indiana State in terms of waiting to see if they earn an at-large bid to the NCAA Tournament. One of the 30 best rankings in the net yesterday for the Sycamores, but they only have 1 Quad 1 victory this season. How does the committee look at the metrics based on what we see in terms of overall record and output and just the quality of a basketball team? I believe Indiana State deserves to be into the big dance. I believe that mid-major teams deserve more opportunities than the team that gets to fluff up its net rankings because it plays in the Big 12 or the Big 10 and the SEC and finishes 9th out of the 14 teams in that conference. It is a very big moment for the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee to make that standard. If you look at metrics, Indiana State's resume doesn't really match even that of the 8th team out of the Big Ten. But if you look with your true eyeballs for the quality of the sport and a Cinderella run in March Madness, which is what we love out of the NCAA tournament, Indiana State should be in the big dance. I hope the selection committee follows.
No, and you're right about that, too, because sometimes you take a look at, well, nobody's ever heard of these teams. One of the biggest internet sensations this year and so much fun and probably showed up even last week even more was Robbie Avila. 35 minutes yesterday, only 15 points, but he's a guy that you would love to say, man, if this team can make it through, Ben, the round of 64 and the round of 32, this team would be a superstar just based on him alone moving forward. But we know how this works out, and they'll tell you every step of the way, we only go by what's on the paper here and what makes some sense. But let's just equate a team like middle of the run team, Michigan State, right, with Tom Izzo. They got superstar power. They'll get the nod over Indiana State, even if there's any part of it's a coin flip. Both of the metrics are the same. We know Michigan State is moving forward in the Power 5 conference here with Tom Izzo because they've won championships before. But this is what we talk about. There's enough food at the table. And some people even try to equate about Donnie. It's not the same argument when you take a look at college football expanding, where why don't you want Liberty to get in? It's not the same thing. There's 68 teams that get in. You're talking about teams that are deserving, senior-laden, fun. And then also, this isn't like, hey, well, it's an automatic bid. You know, they only won 13 games and lost 33 games on the season. Like, no, this is a great team that won its regular season, went to the final, was tied up in the final minute, and you're going to tell me they're not good enough to get in the top 68? Stop it, man. Indiana State should be in, so should Drake here. This is what we always preach every year. These are the teams that actually can win basketball games, 1 and 2 games here to advance to the Sweet 16. I agree with you here. I would love to see Indiana State in.
Robbie Avila is an internet sensation, but he's also a hooper. Yeah. And if the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee denies us the chance to make him an international superstar over a 2-week run in March, I think I will never be able to forgive that selection committee. And I'll just say this. Indiana State, who still ranks 29th in the net, they were 26th entering yesterday's MVC tournament title game. They have 9 road wins this year. Alongside St. Mary's, that is the most for any team in the top 45 of the net. You want to see a team that can go away from the friendly confines like it will be in the NCAA tournament and win big basketball games. That is the Sycamores. Let them dance. That is my plea. Now we look around the country at the end of the regular season. Some conference tournaments have already come to a close. Everywhere else, it is conference championship week in college basketball. The reigning national champs, the Connecticut Huskies, will enter the postseason as the favorites to make it 2 straight titles, plus 480 for UConn, nearly $2 in front of Houston, who now separates slightly by 50 cents in front of Purdue, a 7-1 number on the Boilermakers. But DRS, you see it from the odds there. You might not hear about dominant teams this year, malarkey. Those top three teams, UConn, Houston, Purdue, have been the top three teams all year long in college basketball.
And correct. And you're taking a look at their conferences individually, Ben. It's been Connecticut the entire season in the Big East. It's been Houston outside of that first weekend opening here in the Big 12. They've been the dominant program. And, of course, the Purdue Boilermakers. So that's what we talk about, that top shelf line, Connecticut, Houston, and Purdue. Even if you're saying to yourself, who do you trust more? We know if Houston doesn't bring their A game on offense, they can absolutely crack down on defense. Connecticut here has the heartbeat of an NCAA champion. Why? Because they just won it last year and returned a couple starters back. They know how to get it done, including their head coach. And also Purdue, 7-1 price here. You might not be trusting them based on 2 out of the past 3 years, but what have they shown you this year that's going to say, oh, you know what? Same always here. It's Purdue. Like, no, this is a new version of a Purdue team with a better backcourt and, quite frankly, the best version you're going to get of Zach Edey, which is even better to me, Ben, than when he won the Naismith last year. He's been tremendous this year. I agree wholeheartedly with the way we're being priced with the top 3 programs right now because, quite frankly, I would be shocked if these 3 teams don't reach the Final Four. I would be.
And here's the very interesting thing. We have said this all along for the final 2 weeks of the regular season. Is this now the moment, with the regular season done and finished, to look at your NCAA tournament prices? I would still say hold, wait to see what happens in conference championship week, unless you think there is a team with value currently that is on the uptick. But those 3 short numbers, UConn, Houston, Purdue, I don't think they're going to get much longer. Maybe if somebody is bounced in the quarters of their respective conference tournament. But outside of that, and even if that happens, you're not going to find a ton of value. I would wait until this point on Monday, or maybe right after Sunday, and the NCAA tournament field of 68 is revealed on our Selection Sunday show. We will mark the movement of where those numbers were entering Selection Sunday and where they were after, because coaches around the country will tell you, seed line be damned. It doesn't matter if we're a 1 seed. If the 8 seed in our region is the sneakiest team in college basketball, we'd rather be a 2 to take on the winner of the 7-10 matchup, who either of those teams stink. That is the interesting thing. Your path to a Final Four might be more representative of what the value looks like from the national championship odds instead of where you rank in the AP poll or where you sit on those seed lines.
Absolutely. And also take a look at, we're sitting here Monday. This is before conference tournaments play kicks underway for the Power 5 conferences, right? The high majors. You take a look at Tennessee, who opened up today as we were going over the show at a 10-1 price. They just dropped back to here, a 12-1 price. So these numbers are on the move. And also teams like Kentucky, which were so sneaky a week and a half ago, 40-1, they've now improved all the way down to 23-1 at this point. You're going to get a lot of movement, but Ben and I have been preaching here. These numbers are going to change. Are you upset? Like, I can't bet Connecticut now, Ben. They were 5-1 a couple days ago. Now they're a plus 480 price. You know, I'm telling you, what I'm rooting for here again is like teams like Kentucky, who I want to bet at 23-1. What happens if they run the table here and win the SEC tournament? They're going to drop to like 15-1. Like, what happened? I could have got it at 40-1. Understandably, but there's so much more to happen here. And also, you're right. When you and Coach do that show on Selection Sunday night here, when you see those matchups finally coming through, that's when these numbers will start to kick it in, because that's when it gets real. We have and granted, you take a look at the FanDuel Sportsbook, they already have an idea due to things like bracketology of who's going to wind up where. That's where we're seeing it. So they're anticipating a seed drop for a team or two. Like, ooh, you might want to buy that 8-9, as you said, that matchup here that's going to come through. But once we get that clear picture, you'll be able to fire away. So as you said, hold on to betting those tickets here, because you might love somebody Sunday night that maybe you didn't on Saturday night. It's going to be great.
Plenty more coming around the men's NCAA tournament and conference championship week. After the end of the regular season, it was conference championship week at the high major level in women's college hoops. Number 1, South Carolina remains unbeaten, but what a game it was against the reigning champs in LSU, the number 8 team in the country. South Carolina remains undefeated, 32-0. Camila Cardoso, one of their stars down low, will miss the opening game of the Big Dance after being involved and ejected in the scuffle yesterday between the Gamecocks and the Bayou Bengals. Iowa probably earns a 1 seed as well, with his third consecutive Big Ten title, coming back against Nebraska down by as many as 11 early in the second half, 94-89 in overtime. USC victorious in the Pac-12. Notre Dame makes a run through the ACC as well. So here are the odds quickly for the NCAA women's tournament in 2024. The perfect South Carolina Gamecocks, -115. LSU, +550. Shout out Kate Martin, tied for the second best price alongside the Bayou Bengals, +550 for Iowa.